Well, let the trumpet sound. Guys, I am excited to share a brand new way for you to connect with me and receive porn recovery support for all of my Finding Traction listeners. We are starting a brand new connection platform for listeners that kicks off this month. For $10 a month, you'll be able to join our Finding Traction community and get access to some great new ways of backfilling your recovery. On the last Sunday of each month, this month that will be March 31st, you will get a unique link to join a Zoom call where I'll be bringing a recovery topic and answering any recovery questions you have. You'll also get encouragement from being in a supportive recovery environment. Those groups are going to be at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In addition, for those who sign up, there will be a bonus in that I will be sending you the first 13 weeks of the video course, Finding Traction. And each quarter you remain in the group, you will receive the new quarter material that you can work through. We're not going to be doing coursework in these monthly meetings, but it will give you a format to frame your recovery around. Even better, of course, with a community of guys. So to sign up for our First Traction community group and get your link to join the first meeting at the end of this month, send me an email with the word in the subject line, community. My email is bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. I'll respond with a PayPal link to sign you up. So once again, love to help tool up your recovery for a great porn-free, successful 2024. Now, on to the podcast. So let's ask this question. What goes into a relapse? Recently, I read a description in Mark Dennison's book, 100 Rules for Recovery, and he talked about 3 different types of relapses. The 3 types are an emotional relapse, a mental relapse, and a physical relapse. And as I thought about these 3 types, I realized that they're not actually 3 separate or discrete types of relapse. Actually, and most commonly, there's a progression towards relapse that moves through these different stages. Now, most of us look at our relapses as simply physical. I was triggered and I acted out. I came across a physical situation and willpower failed me. I saw this girl at the gym and went home and acted out. I realized I had an open device or this app had a back door to it, and before you know it, I was back down the rabbit hole. A physical relapse, a physical explanation. Sometimes, and I would actually say more often than not, before you have a physical relapse, you probably had a mental relapse. I created a stopwatch diagram on one of my earlier podcasts, and one of the things I included in was the idea that there's this great starting place. I put it at 12 noon, where you're feeling confident and contented. You're in a place of equilibrium, serenity. You're relatively strong and things are going great. And then all of a sudden, there's this lightning bolt. I have it as a lightning bolt, which is like a trigger. Sometimes, though, I like the idea, instead of putting a lightning bolt, which kind of sounds like something outside that happens to our world, it would be better if we actually put down a thought bubble. You know, like in the cartoons, where you have thought bubbles that describe something that the character in the cartoon is thinking. Chances are, before you physically act out, you had the thought of acting out. You had this obsessive thought or idea and you played with it, and it gained momentum until the point you gave into it. In other words, before you had a physical relapse, you had a mental relapse. Does that make sense? I think it does. I've often been thinking about an idea, oftentimes at the forefront of my mind, or it's just been lurking in the background of my mind. I even have said, I think somewhere in a previous podcast, I swear sometimes that there is a committee in a back room. And they're all sitting around, scrunched around, and they're all trying to jot down ideas for Vern to act on. And they always take the junior committee member and they write, the idea on the piece of paper, and they say, well, go out and give this to Vern and see how it works. And so, the committee member, the junior one, trots out and hands me the piece of paper. And usually I just say, no, not interested. I crumple it up, throw it away. And the junior committee member goes back to the committee and says, oh, that didn't work. But they're never dissuaded. They're very persistent. They say, okay. And they get together, they put their heads together, and they come up with another idea. I swear I have a backroom committee in my mind that is always trying to lead me towards a mental relapse. But today I want to talk about a third sort of relapse, and the one that I think is most important to us reverse engineering what happens, because I would say often before there's a physical relapse, and even before there's a mental relapse, there's something that I would liken to an emotional relapse. For example, last week I spoke about the idea of the doldrums. You're feeling down or off. That would be a subtle one or a low-key one. It might be more striking, like a stressful meeting or a conversation you had with one of your kids that went sideways, or a fight you ended up having, or a disagreement with your wife, or something at work where you felt like your boss was overlooking you or taking advantage of you, and you should have maybe stood up to them, but you didn't. And I would say in that place, we are especially vulnerable to the emotional relapse. Part of the reason that this is true is that over the years, we have conditioned our brain, habitual training, where we have paired acting out with a certain emotional state. When I feel this way, this is what I reach for, because this is what takes the pain away or makes me feel better. Well, at least in the short term. And in this way, because a lot of our behavior, our trained behaviors, are either around avoiding emotional pain or seeking emotional pleasure. Another way to put it would be this way. The mental relapse or the mental state provides a runway. Let's try this again. The emotional relapse, that's what I meant. The emotional relapse provides a runway for the mental relapse, the plane of the mental relapse to land on. So the emotional relapse is giving you the runway. The landing plane is the mental relapse. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a fight with your wife, or you're feeling rebuffed, or she says, I'm not interested in making love tonight, or something happens. And then after that, in that place of feeling rejected or rebuffed, then what happens comes the idea. All of a sudden, that committee in the back room, when they came out with the idea on the piece of paper, they hit you at just the right time because you were in this emotional state. And now all of a sudden, the idea comes, you know what? I think I'm going to come up with an excuse to stay up tonight after she goes to bed and just surf, or just go through YouTube, or just go through Reels or whatever it is. Or the next time she goes out, I'm going to go and see if I can find an old device. And the idea is there. And now the idea has more power. Why? It's the same idea, but it has more power because we're already in emotional relapse. So before you have the idea, the mental idea, you've already had the rejection runway for your thoughts to land on. Here's another way you could put this. If you have one of those random thoughts of acting out, and I still get them all the time, where that committee is still working, they're always working, they never stop working. But if I'm in a good place emotionally, I just take that idea on that piece of paper and I just crumple it up and throw it away, dismiss it. Nope, not interested. Not acting on that idea. That idea is not in my best interest. It's only going to result in a headache and a hangover. However, when you are feeling lonely or isolated or angry or threatened on some level, another fancy way they put it is when you are emotionally dysregulated, then you are most vulnerable to those mental ideas. Now, is there sometimes where it's just a physical, trigger, a physical cue and response? Yeah, it sometimes happens. Is it sometimes just an idea, a mental idea? Yeah, sometimes that happens. But mostly, I would say we really are most helped when we realize this emotional state leads to these acting out ideas when they are full grown, when they come to fruition eventually in my acting out. So I think that can be helpful in this. One of the guys, we were talking about this in one of our groups, and he says it's kind of like 3D relapses: physical, mental, and emotional. You say, okay, well, that can be helpful. What's the solution? Well, the first solution is for us to fine-tune our emotional map. It's one of the reasons why we spend time when we do check-ins. We use a feelings wheel. We're really helping people and really trying to train guys who are usually really pathetic at this, frankly. They often have no idea of where they're at in their emotional state, and we help them locate their emotions. And if you can locate your emotions, then you have a lot better idea of saying, you know what, right now, this is the emotional state I'm in. So if you can help men create more of a detailed emotional map, then the next step is you can create ways of meeting those emotional needs. And sometimes, when I'm feeling bored, then I will do this. I will call a friend, go for a walk, go out to my workshop, play my video game, have a donut. Well, maybe not that one. But, when I am feeling rejected, this is how I will respond. When I am feeling lonely, when I'm feeling stressed, and you create specific ways, self-care ways of meeting that emotional state before it starts as an emotional relapse. If you don't do that, if you don't understand where you're at emotionally, then you will just naturally and automatically reach for the same thing you've reached for time and time again. Have an emotion, stuff the emotion, go to porn. So hopefully that idea is helpful. Before physical relapse, there's often a mental relapse in place. But before both of those, chances are we are beginning to experience and undergo an emotional relapse. Again, until next time, we'll see you. Looking forward to our first meeting. We're getting closer to our first community meeting at the end of this month. Again, it's the last Sunday night of the month, And again, I'd love to hear from you guys. Send me that email. Put community in the subject line. Once again, my email is bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.